Now there's one more thing you gotta know related to that though. The fetch method works such that technical errors, like the one I generated with the invalid URL, are in the end handled with this catch method like that. You also could be errors that are stemming from the server side, so that are stemming from Firebase, which are not technical errors. So where you do get a regular response, but the response simply tells you that something went wrong. And that would by default not be handled with this catch block. And I can show this to you as well. Let me show you a server-side error. And that's something I can do in the learning survey.view file. Here, we're sending the data, and there we are actually not using then or a catch at all. I'm not using then because I don't care about the response here, but I actually should care about whether everything worked or not. So I also want to show the user an error message if sending the data failed. For that, of course, we can add an error property to data here as well, and then simply add a catch method here to wait for a potential error. And if we do get an error, we can set this error equal to something went wrong, try again later, or anything like that. And I want to reset it right before we start fetching. Here I'll set error to null again. So now we also handle errors here in the send data case. And we can use the error property now, for example, here, to show an error message. Of course, you could also instead show an alert, whatever you want to do. But here I'll check if error is truthy, if it is an error string, and in that case, I output the error. And now, of course, I can generate the same error as before if I remove the .json here, now in the case for sending data. If I do that and I try to send data, I eventually get this error output. Now that's this technical error I was talking about. But now let me show you another kind of error. An error which will not be a technical error thrown by the browser, but instead an error generated by the server, which is then still resulting in a regular response being sent back, but a response which is not okay, but which instead has a status code that indicates that something went wrong on the server. And we can force Firebase to do that by removing JSON stringify. With that, we're telling Firebase that we're sending JSON data, and that is what we should send and what Firebase expects. But then we're actually sending a JavaScript object, which is not JSON data. If we do that, reload, and try to submit a new rating, we'll see nothing. Here we see no error message. But if I load my submitted experiences, the new rating, which I just submitted, is not there. I can do this as often as I want, it's not there. And it's also not here in Firebase. There we just have the old rating from before. We can see the problem if I open the developer tools. We got an error here, failed to load request. The server responded with a status of 400. And that's the important part. Now it's not a technical error thrown by the browser, which we had before, but it's a regular response which just has a status code of 400. Success responses always have status codes of 200 or 201. If you have 400-ish or 500-ish responses, that means something went wrong. And that can happen, but the problem is catch is not picking it up. Well, that's just how this fetch method works. We need to add then and have a look at our response. This then function here will always be triggered if we have a regular response, so if we don't have a technical error. And here we can check if the response is okay and then do something. But if it's not okay, which it will not be if we have a 400 or 500 status code, then I want to also set my error. We could do this by setting this error, but we could also do this by throwing a new error object here. could not save data could be the message which I pass to that. The argument you pass to the error constructor is the message that will be set for the error. And this error constructor here is built into JavaScript. This throws a new error, and this will then automatically reach this catch block. And here I can then actually set this error equal to error.message to use my message here. The message property will be present on this error object because this error constructor creates such an object where what you pass here will be stored on a message property. And if we do that and save this, if I now reload and try doing this again, now we see could not save data here. And now we're showing the user some message that allows the user to, well, at least try again later or anything like that. Now here, of course, the problem is a problem we as a developer should avoid. I should stringify this. But in reality, you could have circumstances where the server generates such an error response without you as a developer, the front end, the Vue developer, being responsible for it. That's why this still was a great example, even though that, of course, in reality would not occur. But it shows you how you can handle such server-side error responses. And with that, we really handle everything. We handle success cases, we can load data, we can show messages if we have no data, and we can also handle errors.